like difficult for me to say because my family are going to watch this and like friends that like don't know.
Hi guys, my name is Jasmine Khan. I'm a music journalist and mental health advocate. I'm here today to talk to PleasePrettyLea and anyone wonderer about Ohheycide. It's a very exciting but very deep release. And that means that we're going to be talking about some of the themes in it, unpacking some of the mental health elements, and just generally getting a sense of why it's so important to have music like this out here at the moment. So I'll start by like asking you, I guess it's easiest, why did you call it Ohheycide?
I think with the song Ohheycide, I think I was just going through such a traumatic time. In fact, no, I had to get used to the fact that I'd been through trauma. I think that's where we need to start with Ohheycide. I had not realised that I had experienced a lifetime amount of trauma in a year, and I think dealing with that and all the things that came with it, and then experiencing suicide ideation, extreme depression, extreme chaos, and coming out of it and reflecting upon it was when I actually realised that I'd probably was experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
So when I was in it and I was experiencing the suicide ideation and I was creating Ohheycide, because if you've noticed, when you won't know yet because the song's not out yet, but when the song is out and you do listen to this interview, you'll notice that there's no chorus, there's no verse, there's no structure in it really, is there, in Ohheycide? So that kind of shows the journey that I was on, that it was just chaos. There was no kind of direction. So I think me looking at why I called it Ohheycide was me kind of trying to come to terms with myself that I had poor emotional health at that time, and I think it was me coming to terms with that I had experienced suicide ideation, but I didn't want to admit it to myself. So Ohheycide was a way to kind of get around it but approach it at the same time. So it's like, oh, hey, suicide, and that's why it was Ohheycide, and that's why I think I called it Ohheycide. Yeah.
So it's quite a thing to say that you experienced a lifetime's worth of trauma in a year.
Yeah.
And I guess for people that, because obviously we both work in mental health, and you have your masters in counselling in mental health. So like, when you talk about trauma, what is trauma to you? What does trauma manifest itself as to you?
Well, I think it's anything that can make you feel such intense emotions in a short amount of time. And when I say lifetime amount of trauma, it's subjective, so it can be completely different for someone. So what I experienced, I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. So I've gone from one traumatic situation to another, to another, to another, and I've had to deal with them all as isolated incidents, and it's all just piled up on top of each other. So you can't really, I think the best way to say it is your own experiences of trauma can't be compared to anybody else's. And I think that's why I feel like I felt it so intensely, because I'd never experienced any of it. So me working with young people who have been exposed to trauma, their trauma to them is what makes them feel heightened emotions, and the trauma that I experienced was what made me feel heightened emotions at either sides of the spectrum. So extreme depression and extreme chaoticness. And I think that's where the why I say I experienced such a large amount of trauma in such a short time, and for me to be able to kind of navigate through that and try to heal through that whilst having trauma on top of it, it was very difficult. And I think that's where it was. I think I had to kind of try and get everything into one, the way that I see it in my head, just trying to get it all together and then healing on a whole, because I couldn't heal from one situation to another situation because something kept happening all the time. And I think that's an easy way for me to explain it.
It sounds like you're like pushing upstream constantly, like constantly having things that it's hard. It's almost impossible to heal if you're constantly being like. And I think that's what it was. I think that's what it was. And I think with all my music now, still like the new stuff that I will be doing and the new stuff that is coming out, you will see that process, that healing process, where I'm going forward, but then I'm coming back again,
and I think I likened it to a ladder.
Yeah.
So I know I spoke to you briefly about climbing a ladder, the ladder of healing, and then something happening, and I either stay at that step, or if it's, you know, too much, too intense, I fall down.
Yeah.
Keep falling until I finally like get the strength to hold on again, and then start climbing again, and that's where I start healing again.
Yeah.
So that's how I liken it. I'm always on this like ladder of healing.
Yeah.
So that's why, yeah.
And it's not it's not uncommon for people to talk about the healing process from trauma as being a journey. And I think the ladder's a great analogy for it, because it always has that potential to reclimb. And that's something you've spoken about, as well as the importance of understanding the need to engage in healing if you want to feel better. I want to go back a little bit and talk about, you know, you spoke about Ohheycide, and there's something that seems almost welcoming, almost friendly about the track and the way you engage with the subject matter. Like, again, this is very personal, so we can stop wherever you want, but when you experience suicidal ideation, how do you relate yourself back to that experience? So like, how do you think about feeling suicidal?
I think there's an attraction to it, but then again, when you do watch the video and you do listen to the song, you'll notice that there's different aspects of me that are being portrayed in the song, because I wanted to show everybody what I actually went through and the emotions that I felt. So there is a part of it where I do look quite glamorous in the video, and almost alluring. Is the word alluring?
Alluring. Alluring. So almost like a sexual element, but not a sexual element.
And that is because there's a frill to it. There's a frill of feeling. It's euphoric. The word. That is the feeling that it also kind of gave me as well. And I just want to like point out, like, I'd never attempted suicide, but I did have the suicidal ideations, and that is how it made me feel. It almost made me feel extremely strong, extremely powerful. I can liken it to like what I can imagine to be like superpowers. Like, you feel like this intense strength, like when you kind of think about it, like think about ending it all, and the feelings of being like, you know, I think I'm looking for like worthless, feeling unworthy. So I got so started now.
Oh no, you're a good girl.
This is what this is like.
It's hot in here. Studio.
Yeah, it's hot. No, and obviously talking about your emotions as well. But yeah, so I think it was just kind of experiencing all those different emotions with the song, and I think that's what does make it so beautiful, because it is a journey of the complex understanding of suicide ideations, and I think that is the important point to it. It's complex, it's messy, but again, then it's neat, and it's structured, and then it's unstructured, and then you know what you're gonna do, and then it's not. It doesn't happen that way. So I think it's. I think there's, to understand it, you have to be comfortable with not understanding it. And I think that is the way I kind of see suicide.
That's amazing. There's definitely something about that, the escapism, and that offering you euphoria, and almost like a, you know, God creates life and they take away life. So for you to be in control of your life in that way, especially when you're lacking control over the rest of your emotions and you feel so controlled by them, there's definitely power, there's definitely ego, and that's not to say that it's negative or positive. It just exists, and we need to acknowledge it. And there's definitely, or back to the chaos, you know, that it's never always that. It's not always this great exciting idea where you're like, okay, this is how I feel awful, so I'm going to give myself a way out. And this is also highlighted in the song. There's also a lot of shame about feeling as though you're not worthy of being here, and that you also want to act on it. So what's that like for you?
To experience it, you know something, I think personally I became very scared of myself. I became scared of like this person that I was becoming, but it's just because I didn't know it. And I think with Ohheycide, is the one song that I did write that really kind of forced me to accept that this is you, and it makes you very beautiful. It makes you, you know, very courageous, to speak about it, to sing about it, to become comfortable with the uncomfortable feelings. And I think it was literally about going within and, I suppose, facing your fears head on, because it was scary. I think there was a sense of darkness, but I remember thinking, I actually feel quite comfortable here. I actually feel quite safe here. And I do remember like doing things that would keep me there, which some people might say that's negative, some people might say it's positive, but I felt safe in that chaos,
isn't it?
in that darkness, just staying there, because it's what I knew from my trauma, and it's what made me feel comfortable. So, and I think that's kind of,
I think that's a big thing with lots of mental health stuff, because it's not just suicidal ideation, but you know, bouts of depression, periods of anxiety. If you're someone who experiences bad mental health, regardless of how you experience it, there is always comfort in what's normal. And if your normal is chaotic, or your normal is trauma, or your normal is anxious, and this is very, very peak, but like, it's almost like when you feel better, that becomes abnormal, that increases, that creates its own stress. And to feel, if you're feeling the worst you've ever felt, if you're experiencing suicidal ideation, then you know you're going to do anything that's going to make you feel safe, even if that's keeping yourself feeling worse, which won't necessarily make sense to people who don't have mental health problems. But I reckon everybody who does is sat there like, yeah, mum, I really feel that. For sure.
Definitely. I definitely get myself there a lot. I still do. Like, even I've realised I've said that really loud, didn't I?
No,
sorry. I just know that I do, especially when I'm creating. Like, I know if I need to create, sometimes I will purposely do things to trigger myself, because I'm very aware. And
that's re-engaging with the emotion, isn't it? That's a creative thing. That's important.
I think exploring and like learning a bit about myself, because I'm going back to it, because I know that I like flip flop. I'm quite scatty in my conversation. I'll go to different places, but I know that learning about myself, I know what I need to do to create. So it could be a picture, it could be text, it could be anything that that is associated with my trauma, to trigger myself to create. So I do. That's where I am. I do keep myself. I do it these days. I still do it. Should I don't know, but that's just the way healing goes, I suppose.
It's not. It's never a straightforward process.
No.
And I think obviously I've listened to the song, and as someone who has their own mental health problems, I think the most beautiful, because I cried when I listened to it, and it wasn't because I felt sad for you or sad for me. I think I cried because I felt like a lot of relief in knowing that this was not a unique experience by myself. And I think there is something so important about reminding people that they're not abnormal, even though they might be experiencing something abnormal, and they're not weird, and that they're not strange. And it's very cliche, but that notion that you're not alone, it only really works if people are actually honest about what they're going through. So you can talk about your mental health problems all you want and be sort of honest about what you're experiencing, but if you're not, and this is not me, you shouldn't go and trigger yourself if you're not someone who knows how to manage that. But you putting yourself in that emotional space to such a point where you can be vulnerable enough that other people come in and are like, that's what I was feeling. It's not like something made up out of the thought. It's not like inspired by. Like, this is it. This is what it really is. And that's
true
such
stories. True stories.
But it's so vulnerable as well. So how do you manage your own mental health whilst you're constantly being this vulnerable?
You know something, I've literally, and I think it's just the way, I was just thinking about something when you were speaking, just, this is me now. And that's it, like, this is me, like, so I know that if I have, like, low days, I know that it'll pass. And I know that's not the same for everyone, I know that, and I know that there are avenues where people go to and speak to people, and believe it or not, like, I'm having my own assessments to kind of just figure things out, like, and not many people know that. There's only a couple, yourself, and like my other friends. So this is like difficult for me to say, because my family are going to watch this, and like friends that like don't know, but I'm still having my own assessments just to kind of like figure things out, just so I can protect myself further. But the way that I see myself now is this is me. Like, do I think my trauma kind of enhanced it? Yes, but I've always known that there was something about me as to why I could feel such intense emotion so quickly and so just next to each other. So I think about looking after myself and caring for myself. I think it's just having an understanding of myself and being at peace with myself. Yeah. It is okay to feel like you are unworthy. It is okay as long as you know that you are worthy. So I could feel unworthy, but then I could look at my son and say, no, I know that I am worthy. I could look at my surroundings now, like I've got people with good intentions around me. Yourself, Nathan, Nick behind the camera. No one can see her though. You know, she's sorting to sort out today. Like, I've got good people around me. I think about my blessings all the time. Like, so that's how I look after myself. And when I'm in my chaos, which is amazing to be there, I love being there, even though it's dangerous. It's fun. But I know that that is a part of me, but I kind of wrap myself up in cotton wool when I'm in that space. So I protect myself. Safe. I'm usually on my own when I'm there. It's very rare that I'm around people when I'm in my chaos. But I'm also very good at, which it could be taken as a positive or a negative, at masking my mental health. No one would know unless I've told you about it. Yeah. You wouldn't know. So if I was so there's going to be people watching this thinking, oh my God, I never would have guessed. And that's because I'm high functioning. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, there needs to be a lot more discussions about high functioning individuals who can hold down a job, who can excel at parenting, excel in academics. Like you said, I've managed to achieve my masters. I don't use it as much as I should, but I achieved that. Yeah, and
you've got a master's. So it doesn't matter what you do with it. Or you get a little certificate show you got my master's. I achieved all good.
It. So I went through uni. I did that. You know, I maintain my own place. I pay my own bills. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so you've got you, and your mental health doesn't interrupt your life. You don't let it. It doesn't.
No, but I openly, I suppose, I allow it to come in. I allow it to come in when it's safe to do so, and I think that's really important for me. When it's safe to do so, it's allowed to come in, and that might, some people might say that's, you know, blocking, whatnot, but the way I see it, I have a son to protect, and that's more important.
That's the fine line for you.
That is the fine line. I have a child to protect and safeguard, and I excel as, and this is me blowing my own trumpet, I excel as a mother, so it's like, when you know, Jackson's not in my care and he's being with his dad or whatever, I allow it to come in then and really feel what I need to feel to create and to learn a bit more about myself. And I think it's like with my music, like it's going to allow me to kind of, you know, because I've got poor attachment, I have fears of abandonment, and that was derived from my childhood, which I think a lot of young people have felt when their parents have split up. Just different things, and like, you don't realise it, but when you get into adult relationships, you act a certain way for the fear of someone leaving you, and this was something that was very traumatic for me to even accept.
Yeah, you're just like, I
could not believe that I like had these like issues with abandonment until I really started thinking, what's going on here? Like, why are these people, like, why can't I maintain a relationship, for one? And when like, you know, I've had successful relationships, but I've never been able to maintain them, or the other person hasn't been able to maintain them, and that, like, it just goes so deep. With, you have to kind of just pull yourself apart to put yourself back together. But then when I say that, do I want to be put back together? I like being abstract.
Yeah, and you like floating about.
Yeah, I like that. I can feel these different emotions and go within myself, but come back out as a high functioning individual. But I also know that I'm rambling. No. I also know that a lot of other people can't do that. So I know how lucky I am to be able to go in and out.
I think it's a lot of, I think you said luck a few times there. And I think it is always really important to acknowledge that everyone's journey is separate and different. Yeah. But I think it's also really important to emphasise that you've put a lot of work into addressing who you are, addressing not only the issues that you have, but the cause of them, and then also about how to manage them. And I don't think it's fake, I don't think it's masking. I think, if anything, it's managing and it's grown up. And I've realised this as well. You don't have to always feel like crap to be mentally unwell. You don't always have to be throwing yourself in the deep end and waking up in the morning and not wanting to get out of bed. Sometimes you can wake up in the morning and be like, I feel depressed, I feel awful, and then you're like, but fuck it, I've got to do today. And just because you can do that, just because you can at some point essentially disassociate, switch off, and just not being engaging with your emotions as much to get your day done, that shouldn't mean that, you know, you're not given the support, care, or understanding that other people who experience it do. And I think you should be very proud of yourself for calling that, you know, not everybody is motivated enough by having certain things in their life that they need to look after, and there is an amount of choice in it and responsibility that we also have to acknowledge that we don't a lot with mental health, where it's like, and you know, I experienced this a bit in the pandemic where I indulged, and you talk about indulging in your emotions to get places, and actually the indulgence is not always beneficial to us, even though we're choosing it. I'm going to use that to segue really nicely onto the first version that you wrote of Ohheycide. And there was a first version that you wrote of Ohheycide with a very particular ending. And it didn't end no in the way that you guys will see the track ends. So what was that ending, and then why is that not the ending that we got? It's so
I don't actually remember the ending word by word, but I remember there was no hope. It was very, I feel suicidal, you're going to hear me feel suicidal, and that's it. There was no kind of comfort at the end. There was no kind of imaginary hug sort of thing. It was just me. I feel suicidal, and I want to end it all, sort of thing. And then I sent it as an a cappella. And the reason why I'm like, it's not funny, but the reason why I'm laughing is because what follows it is I sent it to, I'll call you now. Okay. Oh, sorry. Like, you're Nathan to me. I know you're anyone, but I called it to Nathan. I sent it to Nathan, sorry, and he come back and he was just like, "There's no hope," and I was like, "Yeah, there's no hope because I don't feel hopeful." And he is like just talking to me about different things, and you're right here. You were saying to me like, people need hope. People, you know, you need to. There is hope. I can't remember the conversation exactly. Do you remember it?
Nah, it's always different every time you get said, but it's the same message.
The same message was basically you should think about not changing the ending, but thinking about putting more hope into the song. I think
it was challenge that you guys said you wanted to challenge Leanne.
So what I think is from my experiences within mental health and kind of finding strength around that, it was important to relay that information onto people. What I was trying to explore in music was first meeting the person where they are, and then directing them or showing them that there is somewhere to go from this. And I think it was the way that I found purpose in the expression of mental health in music. It's not just because a lot of people who haven't yet, because I consider mental health as a journey, and so it's likely that if not everybody, many people are meant to experience it. It teaches them more about themselves, as you've said, but it's a journey that we all have to go on, and until you start that journey, you don't know you're going to go through it.
You had no idea, honey.
The way I've described it to people is it's almost every fear that we have, our personal fears manifested. And so all our weaknesses are exposed to us and everything, and we have to live and walk through that environment. And so the environment side of it is what is important in music. Now, the way that Leanne creates, I think before you was creating two existing music, whereas what she started to approach with now is that you'll send a cappellas. So all the expression is there, it's laid out, and you get to hear just the raw form of Leanne's creativity. Now, Leanne isn't a producer yet, but she has that in her head already installed, and so she does that through vocals, through harmonies and all those sort of things. I've gone way off point here, but I hope.
No, this is the thing, we're just talking about it, so there is no off point at all.
The way I'm going to tie it in though is through that, it's already the rawest form of expression, which is perfect for how music should be. Not how music is, but how music should be.
Real.
And so what I then get to do is to create the environment that surrounds all of this expression that's already taken place. Now, when it came to the end of the song, what I was creating was a very tense moment. But in knowing how I've already decided music has to go, you have to meet them there and you have to send them somewhere else. There was no somewhere else.
There was only one place that you were just like, this is where I'm at.
This is where I'm at. This is where everybody else needs to be with me at, because this is where I'm at. But then, I don't know if you were still in that place at the time, but I can imagine that what I was describing then was the same thing that I would do in music or in conversation, to say you're in this place, but there's that place over there. Yeah, that's what it was.
And so I challenged Leanne to try and write about the other place, or the attempt of the other place, anything to do with the alternate ideology, so to speak, because it is, I think, depression, suicide, all that things, it should be welcomed in a way to say that I see you, and that it's an experience that is to be felt, to understand how much better things can be as well. And so that was what was always important to be challenged in there, I think, in music, especially when people, I think the people that are going to listen to this are going to resonate to it so much that, one, we know it's going to be something relatable, or we hope for it to be relatable, but we also don't know what decisions they're going to make after that point. And so while connecting to them, we have to make sure that we have also given them value to take away. And I'm going to stop saying anything else now.
Well, because when you did challenge me on it, I remember thinking, no, it's not. We're not going to be doing that. But I think that was kind of just how protective I was of this song, and I still am. This song, I'm very protective over everything, and I've been very involved with it. And I think that's this because it's the most personal song for me at the moment. Because I know I've wrote other songs since, but it was at that time I was very protective over it, and I didn't want to change anything because that was me and my emotions, and I didn't want nobody else telling me what to think or where I was going to go. But I had to sit with that and reflect it, because it was right, it was important, and I reflected on it, and then I changed it. I changed the ending so there was hope, and I'm glad that I did, because there is.
And that was the question I was going to ask you.
There is.
Do you feel like Nathan's challenge made the song more honest in terms of it reflecting your journey up to where you are now? Because that's what it feels like. Just
that tiny little change added the element of control. I'm going to take my control back. I'm going to take my power back. I'm going to heal. I'm going to get to know myself better. You know, I'm going to understand myself, and I'm going to walk whatever path that I've been set to walk on with all these amazing things that go on within me, and just be and exist and just be who I'm supposed to be. And I think that's why adding that little bit of hope was so important. And I think when people do listen to the song, they're gonna, it's kind of like a sigh of relief. So, that's
even
it.
in
No,
the music,
not this time.
It gets really tense at that point, because I think there's a heartbeat type of sound.
There is.
It builds up and it builds up, and then it has that release.
There's a spoken word at the end as well.
The spoken word, so beautiful. And it ends with no, not this time. And I think that's what it is. Not this time. You can feel it, but no, not this time.
There was a saying that I was once given while I was in depression, and it was, "It's okay to be here, but don't unpack your bags here." And I took that with me. I think it's an important one. Shout out, Sammy. But it's an important one. It's really important, because when people, I think this happens with music and in just, it's the taboo in general. Talking about such I'd say, a low frequency or vibration, people who won't experience it reject it. And that's then the worst feeling. That's why the "you are not alone" thing kind of ties in with it all. But as a musician, I have the fear of sharing it, and I think that's the bravery that comes out of speaking about this in music, because I'd show some people just like to test the waters, and it's instantly, and you got anything happier? And it's just like,
nah, sorry, not at the moment.
Yeah,
no, that's not where I am right now.
Yeah.
And what I've learnt is that as creatives, what we go through, we use our creative energy to translate into a language that some people cannot speak. Creativity is a language in itself, and so we use that to speak to those people. Because some of those same people who have said that have then gone through something and gone, and I've listened to this and I've thought, oh yeah, it makes sense.
It makes sense now, yeah.
And so we're merely passing on messages through.
Oh, we've had this conversation.
Yeah.
Vessels.
Yeah, we have
vessels.
Vessels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are also a muse. I think I've heard Lauren Hill say it.
Yeah.
We're a muse displaying all of our emotions for them people to witness and say that we are a mirror of each other in it. So we are mirroring for them that emotion. Yeah. And I think it shows the importance of creativity in the world, because I know that we're in this stage of are creatives important and all this sort of stuff.
The most outrageous conversation haven't been the foundation of society for the past however long.
Without that though, I feel like we would all just be in that high functioning state that you've described. Like as you said, there's times where you allow yourself to feel that emotion. That emotion has to be poured out. And if it doesn't, we are just bottled in all the time, running on autopilot and all that sort of stuff. And so again, the fact that you said hearing the song made you cry, I'm assuming there was probably a moment where there was a lot that you were feeling that was allowed to be poured out in that moment. That's sharing.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It felt like it felt like you were in the room with me. It felt like we walked holding hands through it, and I think that it is that, you know, you talking about, obviously I'm not a musician, and so from a listener's perspective, having that capacity to almost quite selfishly take what you give us and then use it to work through our own emotions in private, like that is such a gift. And so I actually have one last question. I want Leanne to answer it first, and then Nathan afterwards, if that's all right, before we wrap up. So for someone who is listening to this song and all of a sudden they get that experience, they're like, okay, so this means something for me. I have emotions that I need to process with this. I feel heard, I feel seen. You know, what advice would you give them, either when they're listening to the song, after the song, about how to engage with their emotions?
I think the first thing is being honest. You feel it in your gut, physically, because you know you feel it emotionally, you feel it physically, and when you just ask that question, I felt it in my gut. And the first thing that it told me to say was, be honest. Accept where you are. If you're not ready to make any steps towards healing, because we talk about healing like it's something you have to do. Some people don't want to. Some people are okay feeling the way that they're feeling. I think it's kind of what society tells us we need to do. If we've experienced trauma, we need to heal from it. Maybe we just accept it and we manage it and we live with it, and we kind of, you know, turn it into something that works positively for us. Like, I know that I haven't healed, but I know that I'm turning it into something positively that works for me. So I think it's about being honest, becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable, and feeling it, just really like getting in tune with yourself, as in physically. Any sort of feelings that you get, whether it be your shoulders, whether it be your shins. I sometimes get it in my shins. Stress. So some people might not. Do you ever feel like physical sensations? You know, when like your emotions are kind of running wild. Do you ever like I get it in my shoulders, in my shin, or in my stomach?
I get it in my stomach, yeah.
Like that, because that's anxiety, isn't it? And like stress comes on your shoulder at the back of your neck, and your shins is, for me, it's nervousness. So like if I'm like doing this, it's nervousness. So I think it's kind of connecting with your physical being as well as your emotional being, and really being open to whatever messages, I like to say, the universe is sending you, and just really engage with everything, and then face it, and then whatever information you're receiving, then you kind of work through it as such. So it's just about being open to it, allow it to come, allow it to pass through you like a wave.
No, and that's so important, because you know, some people don't even feel our emotions.
We ignore them.
The first step is being like, we have them, and then the processing and healing. Do you know what I mean? That's so far down the line.
Allow them, just allow them to be near you, and just connect with them. I think just connect. You know, even if I did it with Ohheycide by looking in the mirror and speaking to myself, and really letting whatever energy, whatever kind of spirit or whatever that was in me, because I know we spoke a lot about being a vessel, and I remember Nathan said to me, maybe your ancestors are using you as a vessel to communicate their pain, because a lot of my songs speak about pain. So maybe I had to connect with my ancestors. It's just so deep, but it's just about that connecting and kind of feeling one with your emotions and your physical sensations as well. So I think it's just about that connecting and that connection, and being honest, just being open to allowing whatever to come, just let it come in.
And what about you, Nathan, when you're, this song in particular, but obviously more in general, when you're listening to a song and you really feel it, like what's the best thing, what can you go do to make that useful, or not useful but good for you, happy for you, positive for you?
I was going to say, to elaborate on what Leanne's saying, I completely agree. It's like being exposed to the entirety of yourself. And I think when the opportunity comes for people to be exposed to that, they should embrace it. The reason being, like, the longer you hold it off, the stronger it's going to come, you know what I mean? And so, like, be prepared to learn so much about yourself, not just what you've portrayed yourself throughout all these years, but what traumas have been buried in the back of your mind and all that sort of stuff. You're going to learn so much more. You're going to learn the good, the bad and the ugly, as we've said before. And it's definitely I've heard someone call it endarkening. Endarkening, like enlightenment, but endarkenment. It's the other side of the spectrum. It's the yin and the yang. And so I think it's something to be embraced, most definitely, and to learn as much as possible. In answer to your question of how to make it something that's is valuable to myself,
valuable to you, and specifically to you, not to anybody else. Like, because if we're talking about emotions and gaining emotional experiences from music, like how do you make it valuable to you as an individual?
So just yesterday I was feeling anxiety, and I only know it was because I've known how to identify it. But for ages I just didn't know what was wrong, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxiety. I had some music playing, and the song itself like hit me emotionally. I could feel tears inside me pouring out. So men don't cry, obviously.
You'll cry on the inside, not the outside.
I felt the tears on the inside pouring out, and I love when I get that sensation from hearing music. And so what I then do from that is, I think it's the importance of crying that I want to place this onto. Having a good cry is to me a release of energy, and it's a release of energy through expression. Now for me, I do it vocally through singing or shouting or whatever else, but the idea of crying, like, that's the only way to describe it. It feels like it's rain pouring down
through.
And I think men need to be able to have that form of release. It doesn't always have to be like a high energy gym session punching up a punch bag. There needs to be emotional release. And so what I enjoy about having music that allows me to feel that emotion, fair enough, I won't cry. If I could, I would. Like, I've shut it down that much that it takes a lot to make me cry. But to have that feeling inside of just a sweeping of what feels like rain or tears pouring down, I embrace and I enjoy a lot just in itself, and I just bask in that for a moment, just to feel the after feeling of crying. Because when I have cried and that feeling afterwards, it's just like I feel better. I feel relaxed. Because everything's energy. And we store energy, like you said, in the shoulders as tension and all that sort of stuff. You become tighter and tighter. But once you've cried, everything's loose.
Release.
And so what I get from the listening to the music and the emotion of it is I just become loose. And that's just the reward in itself.
And what I'm hearing from both of you is sort of, and it's this energy direction. It's feel it, move towards it, engage with it, be honest, let it flow through you, and then if you can, just let it go afterwards. And that's sort of how we relate to like all of our emotions. But if you can do that with the the assistance of music, it's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a most incredible conversation. And I think that Ohheycide is going to be something that, if it's viewed with the correct lens, could be so powerful and so impactful for millions of people who really need to hear someone speak honestly, vulnerably, and I know very frankly about the experience, for sure.
It's going to be interesting.